get all my bits and pieces while we're waiting for a few people to join. Get myself organized. Thanks for joining, guys. We'll just wait a few minutes just to let a few others join.
All right, beautiful. People coming in.
I've hit the wrong one. Give me a sec. Technical difficulties on my end.
Need to reach out to an IT department.
Oh, I know. It's funny when you're in
IT,
IT, but you don't do IT as often. Like you lose that, the basic desktop troubleshooting skills. Maybe I speak for myself.
I know Meryl's come in with, is it technical difficulties or a user error?
Thanks, Miss. Thanks. Appreciate the support there. Thanks, Stu. We try. I actually shaved today, unlike everyone else on this call. So
hey, okay, it's the lighting.
We couldn't all match.
All right, we might kick off and let the others join. Guys, thank you for joining us today. This is our second MSP in conversation for this year, how to build a perfect team. I am joined by James, Ryan, and Matt, and I will get you guys to introduce yourself in 1 second. But most importantly, there is a Uber Eats voucher for all of you that are on the call if you're a qualified MSP. If you haven't received it yet, please reach out to us in the chat. Our team is standing by to make sure that you get your lunch sorted out for you. So enjoy that while we ramble on, and hopefully you have a couple of light bulb moments while you're having your lunch. So I'm going to start today with a little bit of a quote, and I don't normally do this in these, but I always like this one. If you haven't read Jim Collins' book From Good to Great, if you get the right people on the bus, the right people in the right seats, and the wrong people off the bus, then we'll figure out how to take it somewhere great. At the end of the day, that always resonates with me. Having the right people on the bus and in the right seats is kind of like my little mantra for just gets me through all the HR difficulties and things like that. And it really does, it resonates with me. And it's always kind of a bit of a saying internally for us when we talk about our team. And I look back at how our team at Hosted Network has grown over the years, and as people have come and gone, and how we've shifted people around, that's always resonated. So I just thought I wanted to start off with that today. Hosted Network, if you don't know who we are, we were an MSP ourselves. We started as an MSP before we went entirely channel. Today, we are a Australian wholesale cloud and telco provider purely for Australian MSPs. So we only deal with the channel, only deal with you guys, and with our range of services, which I won't go into each and every one, because you're not here to hear entirely about Hosted Network today. You're here to hear about how to build a great team. So with that, I'd like to get each of you to introduce yourselves. So James, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me again. And hello, everyone. I'm James Davis, Managing Director of C-Level Operations down here in APAC. And for those that don't know who we are, we're a coaching firm that specializes in MSPs to help them mature their business operations and develop their teams and leadership inside them. So exciting to share and talk about building a team today. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Fantastic. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. Ryan Spillane, I'm the CEO of 360 Consulting. We were an MSP, a bit like Ben, and decided a few years ago, and some know me in my other roles, that yes, we've transitioned from an MSP in 360, and what I like to do is actually help a lot of other IT companies in merger and acquisition and valuations, etc. So we've done a lot of M&A over the years and well known for it. So that's kind of what I'll be focusing on this year, starting to do full time. So it's a
You've got a
passion
few
and
tricks
enjoy.
about hiring and building a team then, I hope.
Yeah, over plenty of years.
Good to hear. And Matt.
Hi guys, I'm Matt from GEM. We're a MSP, about 54 staff as of earlier this week. And, I guess just constantly working on growing, things like that. I've met both Ryan and James before, and certainly leveraged some of Ryan's experience in learning the best ways to kind of move forward.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I will stop sharing now and let's get into it. So let me get my. All right. So today, guys, I wanted to start with right at the beginning, right, of sort of the growing a team. Keep in mind, we've got partners on here, MSPs on here of all shapes and sizes. So we're going to have some one-man bands. We've got some guys that are much more established. So hopefully, everyone has, a little bit of information or a light bulb moment for everyone there. Guys on the call, though, if you do have any questions for the panel, please drop them in. This will be recorded, so you can send it around afterwards as well, or revisit it if that's what you want to do. And we will send that around afterwards in the next day or so. But panelists, so where to start, right? Let's start right at the recruitment side of it. You're looking for someone. What do you look for if you're going to actually hire someone? What is the key thing that you actually look for? Ryan, I'm going to throw that to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, on that note, Ben, your
Nice.
title slide was how to build a perfect team.
How to build a great team. How to build a perfect team.
Your slide says how to build a perfect team.
It did. So mine says something different.
Let's be honest here. I don't think there's such a thing as an absolute perfect team. I think there's great teams. I think there's highly performing teams, but I don't know if perfect's such a thing, or it might be perfect for like a second or a minute or something like that. So I think that changes over time. So yeah, I think how to build great teams would be a great slide title. How to build a perfect one. I think that's pretty darn difficult. But I think, look, what are you looking for with someone? Look, it depends on the role. Let's be honest about it, whether it's technical, whether it's in sales and marketing, whether it's a management or exec level or team leader, etc. Obviously, you need to find the right skills for that role. But the biggest piece, I would say, is always hire on culture. You've got to find people that fit your culture. If you don't know what your culture is, you need to spend some time building what does your culture actually look like. How can you define it, which is never easy, but how can you actually define your culture, be it through values, be it through whatever, and all of the above, let's be honest about it. But yes, I think you need to spend time there. And then for us, through our recruitment process, like we had 59 people in our previous MSP. And I would say it's all about speaking to people about the culture, the values, make sure they're aligned to that. Ask them which of your values or whatnot actually resounds well with them and resonates best with them. And then just talk about those things. If they're not the right fit during that whole interview process or your onboarding process, then they're not going to be a good fit for you longer term, unfortunately. So I think culture is by far the biggest piece for us.
It's a very good point. At Hosted Network, we actually do a cultural round of dedicated to interviewing, where we actually get different team members from, to basically sanity check it, and they get the final say. Even if, I can't overrule it, they get the final say. And we found that's been a very successful thing for us because it rules people in. If as those of us that are doing interviewing, you can see someone and you might have, external pressures. You've got projects coming up, you've got those sort of different things. So you've got these pressures. So sometimes you want to get a seat filled, but you definitely shouldn't always do that for the sake of it. Getting the right fit is very important. James, from your side, I mean, you talk a lot about operational sides of it. How do you feel it from your side?
Starting point, I completely agree with Fuzz around it. There's no perfect team, and I think that's where we make the mistakes as well. We try and really define exactly that box of who we need to hire, and we miss a lot of other opportunities there of creating diversity and getting people in there with different points of view and different skill sets. And a lot of the time it's not deliberate that we're doing it that way. It's just how we work, how we do it, because we just hire people that are aligned to us and we don't have a well-defined culture, like I was just saying. If you don't have a well-defined culture, always start with self-awareness from an owner perspective, because at the end of the day, being small business, it all revolves around us however we frame it up anyway. We're the main leader, we're the main authority. This is how clients are buying from us. It will be a long time till we get out of that sort of position. No matter how we build it, it still revolves around us, so let's embrace it. And that's where the uniqueness starts. Everyone that's attending now, we're all different. We've all got sort of same objectives, but we'd all go about it differently. We've got a different way of speaking, got different values that we value personally. That's where we start. Like, what sort of people do we want? What do we want to achieve for our clients, and start building it out that way to have a deliberate culture. And like what Fuzz was saying, that process of hiring becomes a lot easier at that point, because we're looking for the right fit person, and then we can build it, like we're building out the jobs and the specificity in tandem with that, where we tend to start with, this is the job role, we need that 100% exact fit for it to work, and it just doesn't line up. And I think for a lot of us is, we don't really go and get the help to do this either, especially in the smaller side of things. Like Fuzz was talking about building up to 59, and Matt's built out his team up to like 54. When you're that size, you've done a lot more recruitment over time, and you learn the mistakes. So I've learned a lot of
plenty of them.
And for us, for the smaller MSPs, you generally don't get the volume to learn the mistakes enough for it to be turned into a process and understand how to go through this recruitment. So my biggest piece of advice when we're starting and looking at recruitment is actually get a partnership with someone outside as a recruiter, more importantly, as a HR person, to actually engage in a managed services type arrangement of helping develop the culture, helping to develop that sort of people management and leadership and all of that internally. And then they will be able to be more effective in recruiting. We typically use a recruiter as a project once-off basis. And we all know in our managed services companies, how well does a once-off project work with a random client that contacts you out of the blue? It's always an absolute mess. It never works. We never get the results. Where we know, if we've got an existing client that we work with and know them inside and out, we get great results for them. So that's how we should treat recruitment.
Interesting. I like that angle. We've got a comment from Brendan in the chat. Does that work in today's world? Staff are hard to get at the moment. You know, it's an employee market. You know, and often time is of the essence. You know, we've got those projects. How do we get around those potential, you know, of prioritizing those aspects of it, and not just hiring the first person that can fill the position? Matt, I'll throw that one to you.
Yeah, look, it's hard, because I 100% agree with that. It's hard finding staff at the moment. It has been for a couple of years, and I think, you know, we're going through those same pain points at the moment. We're trying to grow the team. There's demand for more people, but the right people aren't out there. So we will typically continue our recruitment process. We won't just hire the person that's, you know, the best of a bad bunch, because as Ryan said, you know, if they don't fit the culture, you know, which is a key concern for us as well. If they're not going to fit the culture, they're not going to be long-term for us. We don't want to just hire someone in, go through the training. The training costs us time and you know, I guess money to do that. There might not be a bill for it at the end of the day, but you go through all of that pain, customers start engaging with this person, they don't stay. It has, I guess, a flow back effect on that. So we'll continue, and I guess we've got a really good culture. We've got a great team of people who will help pick up the slack while that position's outstanding. It's tough, but, you know, I guess everyone in the business seems to agree that culture is a very important part of who we are.
Okay, so Brendan just sort of expanded on that there for his question, and I think it's quite a good point that in a recruitment process, you can't necessarily draw that out either in today's market. You know, I mean, we've recruited a few people recently, and one of them made the comment of that he'd done like 8 different rounds of interviews. I mean, process, I think, is an important part of that as well, right? What's in a quick answer, how many stages do you think is an acceptable, and James, you're very process driven in what you do as a business, right? What would you suggest in that sense?
Depends.
Is there a sweet answer, like a bang on point?
I don't think there is. It really depends on what you're hiring and the job role. And I know that's not what people want to hear. I agree, in today's market, long drawn out processes aren't necessarily beneficial, but actually they can be if it's transparent. The main reason why potential employees don't stuff around and wait to go through the process is it's not laid out in front of them. They don't know what is the whole process to go through so that they can appreciate what am I getting myself into. If you lay that out in front of them in the first place, and they see that transparency and they see the opportunity of them getting to see if they're a fit for the company and if you're a fit for them as well, actually it's the reverse effect, because you're showing your maturity and your transparency in how you're working with someone to get the right fit. And that's one of the most important things of what the general younger people are actually looking for. They want to be working somewhere for a cultural fit. They're not just looking for a job's sake, where I probably in the last generation, I'm that on the older side of the millennial, where I'm a bit old school, but in general, most millennials and Gen Zs are actually looking for that cultural alignment and being able to see there's a path. And if you've got that well thought out recruitment process, you already set yourself apart compared to most people that are complete shambles and non-transparent. So yeah, I'd counter it and go, actually, it's a unique thing that you can leverage as a huge opportunity.
I like that. I think that in today's market, employees do have choice. There's a lot of positions available, and I mean, I dare say that most people on this call will be recruiting at the moment and trying to find people, and have been for some time. And it is, I see regularly on my LinkedIn post partners, and it's just, around and around. And it's even people swapping between partners, right? And that's IT in Australia is a very small world. We've all had an account manager that has been to, multiple different vendors that we've dealt with, and they just bounce around. And that's the world that we live in a way. So the thing that I do see the most in terms of recruitment is around tech, right? It's finding, junior questions, those sort of things. So, junior, level 1, level 2, your day-to-day desktop support sort of. Where should the guys on the calls look for those? James, you said to recruiters. Matt, where do you look for staff? Is it just recruiters?
So we do a mix, and I guess part of it depends on the role, the timing. There's a lot. I mean, previously we used recruiters all the time for all of the roles, and with, I guess, a gap in the market that seemed to come a couple of years ago, with the number of quality people out there, we also started advertising on Seek or using multiple recruiters to try and work out where the right place was, because that one method didn't seem to be working. So maybe it was the recruiter, maybe it was just there's not the right people out there. So we started doing both. I've recently just hired a role in our business for HR, and the I guess where we're taking that is to do more of the Seek style advertising and go through the process of those initial stages of, is this the right candidate, have a conversation with them, see whether they progress through, and I guess effectively take that role of the recruiter. It's hard when you use recruiters, in my mind, because you can't see everyone, and there might be someone that does fit that doesn't meet that criteria that you gave your recruiter. So it comes in the other way. You can see all of them, but that's then met with the time poor problem. A good job will potentially get you 100, 200 people. That's a lot of time to go through those resumes. So we've I guess filled a role in our business to try and accommodate that. But we have seen success in the last year or so using both methods. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. It really depends what attracts the right candidate, and whether they see the ad through a recruiter or they see it through Seek. What jumped out at them could be different in every scenario.
Back in the day, I used to hire a bunch of techs through Whirlpool. Back in the day, it used to always, they always worked out really well. I think Dylan, our infrastructure manager, actually came from Whirlpool as well. But it
don't
changes.
Think you stop. Sorry, I don't think you stop recruiting. Good, mature MSPs, doesn't matter the size, to be clear. This is not a big MSP thing. You don't stop recruiting. I think everyone would openly agree on this call that if they found a great engineer, you'll take them on regardless. You'll easily find the work. It's not a case of finding the work. It's always been the case of finding good staff. And I think Matt's right in that I don't think there's any one way of doing it anymore. I think you need to be using recruiters. You need to be doing Seek. You need to be doing even a newspaper from time to time, because you never know who's reading it. It's not something you do every single time, but likewise, Matt's right in that recruiters have their place, and I'm not anti-recruiter, to be clear. I've used plenty of them over the years, but I think they're just another way of doing it. It's I do like the Seek method and any of the replacements and of those from nowadays, and there's new ones out there and whatnot. But you do find those diamonds in the rough that way, where a recruiter, if they don't fit in the box of what they think you're looking for, they won't ever show them to you, or rarely will they ever show them to you because they don't want to waste their time, and vice versa. But yeah, you find some really good diamonds in the rough through random conversations, through other people. I've had other IT companies refer their staff to us in that they've had a change of business, or through COVID, had to downsize a little bit. And they actually said, "Are you looking for more staff?" And we said, "Yes." And they actually referred good staff to us. They didn't give us their rubbish. They gave us good ones because they had to contract a little bit. And then now they're looking for staff again. And it's just what happens. It's keeping your eye and your ear out in the marketplace and look creatively.
I think it's worth noting as well that, you know, and using the various avenues, you might have a really good candidate you don't know yet that has, I guess, experiences in the past with using recruiters. And I've heard a lot of, you know, stories from candidates where they've been involved through a recruiter before and haven't found that process to be great or found it more difficult. So I do know of people out there that I've met, some that I've hired, who had a bad experience in the past with recruiter. So just avoid responding to ads where a recruiter's involved. So if you're all focused on recruiter, there could be a bigger portion of people that you're just missing out on.
It's a very competitive talent pool in that sense, right? So you want to have as many options as you can. We've just had a comment from Steve that planning at the right time of year can also be very good in terms of graduates and things like that. I've personally found great success in those areas or aligning myself to the local TAFEs, those sort of things. And one of the things that I've often tried to develop and maintain is a level 1 program, to make sure that we've always got, like Ryan mentioned, that constant, not just recruitment, but that constant, we're constantly developing more senior resources internally, because I think we've all been in a position where we've hired a senior, resource, especially from the enterprise space, and they don't get the MSP mindset. Whereas, training up often yields better results. With that in mind, graduates and whatnot, use that as a bit of a transition. I always like to ask this question. For techs, specifically for techs, what do you care about from their education perspective? Does a university degree matter?
I think it depends, again. And I think if we look at trainees and graduates and all that kind of thing, like everyone's mentioning, like it's hard to find quality applicants. And I think it's a burden that we've created ourselves in the industry. And we'll talk a lot more about like retention and that kind of thing. But in general, probably about 2014, I noticed the great majority of the industry stopped accepting trainees. It was like we could only hire experienced people. And it's only started back up in probably the last 2 years that trainees are an option. So we've basically wiped out a generation. So when we're talking about we can't find any experienced people, it's because us as an industry didn't develop them and didn't keep the people in the industry. So it's really worth keeping that in mind. And I think a lot that are starting to buy into that as an option now and want to do it, they're not set up to train and develop those people. Not enough processes and not enough focus on what do we need to learn and what skills do we need to know. Like the whole take a step back in just like tech roles. You just talk to everyone on this call, they'll have a different opinion what a level 1, level 2, level 3 tech actually is and what skill sets they should have. So we don't even have standards in the industry to base it off. So each business is hiring something different. And when we talk about it and compare salaries, it's different. And when employees are going to search on Seek or whatever, we don't know what the employees don't know what they're getting into either. So there's a lot of disjointedness and lack of clarity as an industry that we could get better at. And I think having that framework to start with what are we trying to fill and what culture that we're aiming for, then it's a lot easier to find the skills and what's right and then feed in that sort of training program from the graduates. If we don't have that, all we're going to do is hire one graduate and it's a sink or swim moment. They're either going to be super awesome and fantastic and do, or they're going to flounder either because they're not the right person or we haven't set them up for success. So it's very important to be mindful around that and how to make that work properly. And especially for the smaller MSPs, typically they're only going to hire one. All the good trainee programs that I see, even in smaller MSPs, is hiring more than one at one time because it's more efficient to train 2 or 3 people on the same things at a time with the potential that 1 or 2 out of that cohort is going to fail, but we get one good person in it. So we have to think about that sort of recruitment at that level a lot differently as well.
Just to grow on that and on Steve's comments, I know Gem, Steve has a team that is basically, I guess, those trainees, those graduate style positions, and that's, I think, and Steve might correct me, but I think we've been running that for about 4 or 5 years, and you know, it's basically people that want to get into IT, and we saw, and the idea actually came from another MSP, but looked at what the market was looking for, and it's like, oh, you know, we want junior people because we don't want, you know, we've got a smaller budget, but we want 5 years experience. And you can't have both, you know. It's that age-old story. I want someone young that's cheap, but I need 10 years experience. It doesn't happen. So we developed, I guess, internally and took the part of the idea to build that up, and we've had a lot of success with a lot of people that have come in at that you know, that very junior level, not even level 1, have been trained by us, learnt our bad habits, which is sometimes better than someone else's bad habits, and you know, a number of them have actually progressed up and now sitting in level 2 within, you know, 1.5 years, 2 years. So they're motivated. We've got, I guess, goalposts. They have to meet certain marks as they go through. They have to sit certain certifications, not university, but, you know, like vendor style certifications or CompTIA A certifications before they can progress through. So, you know, from that initial start with us, the transparency is there. They can see what they need to do to continue to grow, whilst at the same time we're giving them the experience that, you know, a lot of places back 4 years ago just weren't in a position to give.
I think that's an important point.
We have our own cadet program.
Yeah,
exactly that. And we have run a cadet program, and every 6 months we'd hire a new one. And there was a 2-year cadet program, and every 6 months we kept adding one. So it basically meant we had a continual flow. And look, to be honest with you, it's not cheaper. Let's be honest about it. It's the amount of resources you need to put in to train them, level 2, level 3, mentoring, etc. It's nothing to do with the cheap, because yes, they might cost you a little bit less on your books, but in reality, the effort you go into them, they're actually quite expensive. But someone had 2 parts. We did it as no different than what Matt said. We get to train them our bad habits and don't have to break other people's bad habits, or the best way of doing it. But on the other hand, though, someone's got to do it too. Someone actually has to give back in this industry. And it's all good and well saying that we give back to the industry, but how many people actually do it? So for us, we did build our own cadet program, and yeah, we put a number of people, I think probably 6 or 7 people in the end through the program, and they're now, most of them are still in the industry. So Some started out as, like, again, for us, they had a passion about technology. They had no idea how help desk worked, what practice management software, any of those types of things. It's, yeah. But back to your original question, Ben, was does a uni degree or any of those things matter? I don't think so. From what I've seen, unless you're going for a business consultant or a BA type role or senior roles where it helps a bit, but I would much rather see someone that's been passionate about technology, passionate about learning, and over 3, 4, 5, or however many years, they've actually continued their education. They've done Azure, they've done network skills, they've done this, they've done that, whatever it happens to be. They've actually engaged with vendors or even just online training, and have actually certified themselves over a period of time. That to me is, I think that's a lot better than someone that's done a uni degree who's been able to do it basically full time for 3 years and then doesn't learn or doesn't train afterwards. I'd much rather have someone without the uni degree, maybe have someone with someone that's on a TAFE diploma or whatnot, has a passion for technology and the industry, and is willing to learn. They're going to soak things up. They're going to be a sponge. And they're going to, as we call it, for the first couple of weeks in what was Correct Solutions, it was like drinking from a fire hose. It's like you can learn as much as you want, as much as you can handle, and it can keep going. And that, for me, was always the better outcome.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed that part of the, you know, passing on my knowledge and watching people grow within the team as well. I like the example of being a sponge, and I often say to a few people, I'm like, just be a sponge, you know, absorb as much as you can, but it's okay because, you know, you're not going to absorb everything. You know, there's a point in every day. But we've had a few questions here, comments around, you know, that people have had success of graduates, and a few comments here. Where have you guys found your graduates? We've mentioned TAFE, but are there any, and we've mentioned trainee programs, but is there something that the guys on the call could potentially look at to actually kick off their own trainee program or something like that you guys have had success in or have used?
Look, sometimes it's the neighbour's son. It could be someone that's come and done work experience from school. Well, that, to be honest with you, is often a good way of getting them, because they've come from school at a year 10 or 11 or 12 or whatnot, and they've come and done some work experience. Find out whether they like it or not, and it's a good couple of weeks for you to see whether they've got any passion or not. Yes, they're extremely green. God, at 17 or 15 or whatnot, so everyone's green, and it's just the way it is. But yeah, look, I think any of those, if you openly talk that you have a cadet program or whatnot, you get so many people responding to it. It's people are looking for people to get back into this industry. I can see there was another question there as well. At what size did we do it? I think we would have been 40, 45. But don't get me wrong, we were thinking about it for years before. Even at 2025, we were thinking about it. We just didn't have the process down on how to do it. It wasn't a size thing for us. I think you could do it at 8 or 10 people without a problem, to be clear. Even 5, I think you could do it. The catch is, it's just having some process around it. Be it, let's say they have to go and do some TAFE certificates as well if they're coming in younger than that. Get them to do that part-time, as well as some work with you for 3 or 4 days a week or whatnot. The biggest things is realistic expectations, I'd have to say. You can't expect these guys who are level 0, they're not even level 1. They're level 0 to not mess things up, to not make mistakes. This is life, and the biggest thing you've got to have as well is a culture that says for them to be able to make mistakes, but also understand when they're out of depth or out of their comfort zone, to take a breath, stop, and ask someone near them, even a level 1 or a level 2, is, hey, what I'm doing, is that okay? Is it going to cause a problem? And having that culture where even level 3s will talk to each other and bounce ideas off each other. Level 3s level 3s would ask even a level 1, hey, what do you think of this? And it's a training moment for them as well, but it makes them feel great that, hang on, an L3 is actually asking an L1 for a question. There's nothing wrong with that. Remove some of the ego here. It's not a problem doing that. So I wouldn't say it's a size thing. I think it's more a maturity piece of whether you're willing to really invest the time. Because someone like that, if you invest a few years in, yes, they become L1, and then from L1 to L2, there's how many people in some of the businesses that have been around for quite some time have people that have worked with them for 10, 15, 20 years in the one place. They're the ones that have generally grown through the ranks over a long period of time.
I completely agree with you, Fuzz. So, like, I've got in our coaching program, we've got some smaller lifestyle businesses that, 10 staff, they're successfully doing the training program with juniors. It really is just a maturity and a want to do it, and having the processes in place, and it's very successful. There's a lot of advantages for everyone. I think, taking a point that you made a bit before around trying to find people that's got a passion for technology. What I'm seeing, being fortunate enough to view a lot of MSPs across the industry, is a lot of owners are struggling to look at the younger kids. There's like, you mentioned like 15, 17, like even 20-year-olds. For most owners now, that's a 20, 30-year gap. And they think back to when they started in the industry and how they got their start and what qualities they have. That's not who's coming into the industry anymore at all. We still get young kids that are, still that nerdy, play around, create a gaming machine, and they're a potential fit because they're fiddlers, and that's where I see most of the owners get excited of, they do this stuff at home. But we're missing out on some opportunities. The industry has shifted a lot. It's a lot more process-based. It's a lot more customer-focused. It's a lot more technology and productivity, and how do we actually use the tools, not just fix the back end. A lot of actually the people that are looking to come into the industry at the moment are not from a technical background. They're looking at, well, I've got some customer service skills. Technology actually looks like a good, stable career with long-term prospects. So we want to come in. It's not the best and brightest young kids that are coming in than it was like 20, 30 years ago when it was a cowboy industry, because all of those people are going to AI and all the more shiny technology parts of the industry. So we're getting more stable, process-driven and customer-friendly type people. And I see a lot of owners write those types of people off. So it's really worth understanding, like, what do we actually deliver? Going back to our culture, going back to what our clients are doing and what we're actually delivering. So we've got that frame of reference and looking to the future. They're not useful now, they're green. What are they going to provide in 5 years' time if I retain them and invest in them? Where are we going to be with that technology? We can mold and shape them so that we've got that experienced workforce in the changed environments. So there's long-term play there too.
Okay, well, I think that's a good transition period, because this is a big topic. We've got to remember we've only got an hour today, and recruitment is a big piece of it. But please do ask questions, guys, if you do have them. But I'd like to shift a little bit. We've found this great, level 1, level 2, level 3, whatever it might be, level 0, right? How do we retain them in this competitive landscape? Right, because everyone is recruiting at the moment, and we tie back to this, this idea of culture, of having a great, company. It's not a ping pong table. It's not a, I mean, I've seen, and sure, maybe that was attractive once upon a time, but the world has changed, especially in the last 2 years. So I'd really be keen to hear from you guys, and this all so ties back into the recruitment piece of it, right? Culture is. A lot of these, since COVID, they can work from home now, or they are moving further out. What are you guys doing as part of your businesses, and what do you see in the industry that is working to help businesses retain their staff? Matt, I'm going to throw this one to you.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question. I think as a business, we look for the right culture in people. And I think someone made this comment earlier. I think those people also look for the right culture fit for them. So it's looking for that win-win situation. So we've had a few guys in the last couple of weeks been headhunted by another MSP out there, and the offer on the table was amazing. Like they've been very open and honest with us, and I guess we try and replicate that. We're open and honest with them. They're open and honest with us. I've been approached. This is what's on the table, and a lot of the time, all of these cases of late, they've declined the offer and stayed with us. And I think part of that comes down to the people they work with, that culture, the business. I think as well, part of it comes down to the level of tech they get to play with. So our customers are running some very complicated networks, enterprise grade equipment. that might be for the right person, part of that. But I don't think there's any one thing that makes it someone want to stay long term. And if we look back through our business, we've got guys that, that are coming up 13, 15 years, things like that. And it's a good majority of them. The ones that don't have that time with us are the ones that are coming in new, but they're staying with us. So
that's a big testament to your business. If you've had, guys that stayed with you for 13 years, I think you must be doing some things to help maintain that. Ryan, in your business, your previous businesses, what have you done?
Well, culture is key. Culture is critical. But I think it's, as Matt said, it's not just one thing anymore. Yes, culture is a big piece of it. People need to be challenged. People need to be have some flexibility. And now that's flexibility used to be able to go to take the kids to school or go and do a school thing or go to the doctors or get a haircut in the middle of the day. Those things were easy. Now flexibility has changed. Flexibility is working from home for a couple of days a week or those types of things, or even permanently working from home if you're hiring staff in other states or in remote locations, because that might be the only place you can get the staff. They want to be excited about where the business is going through both transparency. Are you putting a good vision out? Are you explaining where the business is going? Are you explaining how they can actually help? That's the biggest thing with a lot of pieces. Like anyone can go out and put a great strategy out, or hey, this is where we're going to take the company. But if people have no way of how they can help bring the company forward or help get to that goal, there's a disconnect and it doesn't actually help. So you've got to make sure there's alignment and that each person knows how they can help the company achieve what you want and where you're going. That again builds on the culture. They want to play every now and again with some cool tech and something interesting. They don't want to have customers that are like, yes, we are in an industry that can be a bit negative. Customers are only ringing us generally when they've got a problem. There's not that many customers that ring us and say, hey, the network's working great today, or hey, the computers are working fantastic today. I'm glad I didn't need to ring you, but I did anyway. Like you do get the odd customer like that. It's extremely rare, but they are out there from time to time. But normally, most people are ringing you on they're having a really shit day, excuse the French, and I know this is getting recorded, but something's just broken, they've just lost a file, they're having an absolute crap day, and sometimes they unfortunately take it out on our team. And you've got to, if it's a continual thing, if there's customers that are just not a good fit for you, it's really powerful firing some of those customers as well, and let the team know that they weren't treating you right and the team members right, and we're supporting our team. There's plenty of customers out there. There's not a problem in generally going and finding other ones unless you're extremely regional and there's not many people in the town or companies in the town at all. But normally you can often find a replacement for that customer. So again, staff want to know that they're being looked after, that you're thinking about them, how they can help, play with stuff, have a bit of flexibility. And I think all of those pieces do it. But don't get me wrong, you're not going to retain everyone. People need change. And sometimes, and we're seeing it right now with in America, the Great Resignation. And even in Australia, it's happening. People are just moving to new roles at different companies, hoping or thinking that it's different, when in reality, it's not. They know it's not, but they just need a change. They've not
Is the grass greener on the other side of the fence?
That's right. And as an interesting South African once said to me, the grass covers a lot of shit. And I've loved that ever since he told me that. And it's so true though, because you don't know until you get across there. How many people have been on an overseas trip in the last couple of years? How many people have had a good break? They haven't. If at most they've staycated at home and really all they've been in ISO or something like that. They've not really had a break. So people are looking for something different, and that might be it. Right now, people are just changing roles. And I know so many people that I've got that have contacted me. Even last night, I've had someone message me at 10:30 last night. He's only been in a new role for like 5 months, doesn't have a big problem with the company, pretty happy, but it's not what he was looking for. So he's ready to jump again. It's like, if you just try, like if people are just moving elsewhere to try and find something, they generally won't find it. So you've got to give them that base. Sometimes you've got to let them go out and have a bit of a chat. We've had someone that's just hitting 15 years with my old company, and he went and had interviewed 3 or 4 times, and he came back. As Matt said, have a culture that people will come back and tell you where they're at and what they're doing and talk it through. That's what we did plenty of times with people, and they realized it wasn't actually going to solve what the underlying issue was for them. So,
Like I'm going to, say that we actually had a staff member rejoin us yesterday. I'm going to say Luke actually rejoined us at one point as well. So and I think that's life is a journey, right? Not just for ourselves, but for our teammates as well, our employees, our colleagues, and you don't know what they've got going on in their own life. You don't know what other pressures they've got as well. Stephen's made a comment here that some people will leave for money no matter what. And that's just life. And I think that in that sense, well, maybe, if you're paying competitively, and sometimes it is harder to pay extremely competitively, especially at the moment when you've got the big, enterprises just upping and upping and upping what they pay because, there's no IT staff in Australia sort of thing. It is difficult. But I think the majority of people aren't money driven in that sense.
No.
I think
most people won't change for 5 or 10 grand.
No.
Yes, if it's 30, 50 or 80,000 more.
It's harder to say no then,
which
right?
I have seen. A lot of people will take that. That's just life.
Some things you can't refuse. And I mean, Stephen makes a good point. If they're going to leave for 5 or 10 grand, then they're probably not the right culture fit for you anyway.
Right person on the bus, in the right seat.
I'd agree with that. I think all the points are awesome, and I think you can distill it down to a couple of things. I think we often forget there's a lot of advantages to being in a small business, and we keep not that we effectively execute on it, we keep trying to take lessons from corporate and try and stuff it into our small businesses, and we fail. And HR and retainment, I think, there's a lot of good lessons that we can learn from corporate, like training. Like, let's actually provide our people training, because if we're not, there's already a distinguishing feature. If I'm looking somewhere else and Fuzz tells me that he provides training and Matt doesn't really convince me that it provides it, well, I'm going to go to the one where it's training, because at least I get something and I know I'm going to get something out of that. So a lot of what we've got to remember is we're generally working with people that are 20 to 35 in the industry. That's the majority of the workforce. There's obviously still some older people around, and they're usually the more settled. And most of them at this point are like managers or owners kind of level, and we still got it. So, that's like one senior tech that's been around forever kind of thing. But we're talking about people that are in certain life stages, and the taking money is because of life circumstances a lot of the time. It's not actually driven by money. It's like the partner at home is saying we need more money. There's the driver, the motivator. And I think more than anything is the connection. If we even at a 50-person business, like Matt and Ryan, but you can still have a personal connection with all your employees at that size.
Yep.
And that's what most people want. If we've got a purpose and what we're aiming for with the company, like Fuzz said, if we've got a plan for them and we work with them, and then we actually take the time, whether it's an owner or managers and leaders, to provide consistent feedback and adjust the plans as we're going, people want to actually stay. The majority of the time, we give them reasons not to stay, whether we know it or not, and whether they are better off moving somewhere else or not. Like there's advantages in people going and coming back and learning different skills and growing. There's also a danger here. We pride ourselves on longevity of employees. That's great as long as those employees are actually training and staying relevant. My experience is the majority of people that have been in the industry that are our senior techs, 10, 15 years, they're becoming static. They're not training in these new things in general. Like you guys might be lucky and have that culture that keeps promoting that training. But in general, in the wider industry, the experienced techs, their skill sets are becoming more and more limited. They're not really understanding the cloud. More scarily for me, and what I'm seeing is they're very resistant to security. They don't understand best practices. They flat out refuse to implement some of the best practices when they're challenged because it's too hard to do our job now. And they're the ones that the business owners that are becoming less tech savvy are relying on to make all these risk decisions about technical standards in their environments.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, like there's dangers for retention as well if we're not doing the right things. So training is super important. Connection and regular feedback and that relationship building is super important. Having an overall purpose, and that will drive most people. Most people are joining small business for all the things that Matt and Fuzz have said, because they get to play with a lot more things. Go to Matt and Jem and get to play with these complex network and all this enterprise grade stuff. They don't know what corporate looks like. They're young, and unless you're transparent and have those conversations, like even these 40, 50, $60,000 increases, they don't understand what job they're actually walking into. And most of the time, I'm not seeing owners have the conversation transparently to lay it out in front of them to say, here's what the role looks like. This is what you're going to have to do to succeed at it. Good luck, go and do it. But we're not even setting up the people for success to go into and move into these next roles. So
it's a basic thing of communication, right? It's like any relationship. Relationships fail without communication. You know, setting clear expectations, making, and not just saying it once in that sense, reinforcing it. You know, if you're going to set KPIs, it's all well and good to set them, but reviewing them regularly. And that's hard when you're a small company as well. You know, we're all time poor in that sense, you know. So that's maybe James, you know, that's where what are some of your tricks, and is there ways that we can
we have time. It's what we choose to spend it on. Like, especially with our employees, right? Like it's much easier to go solve XYZ problem that's on fire than it is to prioritize and sit down with our employees to talk. Like that, to me, that's an excuse. We're not, if we're too busy to talk and communicate and work with our employees, we're too busy to have employees. Like we just should go to our perfect team of one. Like it sounds very brutal, but like our people are the most important part of our business, and we've got to actually treat them and show them that. And especially with the flexibility of work from home and in COVID, the generational gap between owners and the employees really showed. The amount of people I've spoken to that as soon as everyone started going remote, there was no team meetings, there was no tech huddles, there was no one-on-ones. If I was a tech on the front line doing super stressful, hard job day to day, would I want to stay there doing that work? No, I'd go look for higher pay. I'd go look for a place that engages with that culture. And work from home is not going to go away. So we need to set up the meeting rhythms, whether it's in person or whether it's on via Zoom or Teams, and actually talk to our people. We start with planning your week out of what meetings do you have to do with your people, and then fill the gaps with the other stuff. And that will show you what to delegate. Like that's the simplest place to start. Because without that discipline, we don't default to it. And that's what causes the disconnect with communication and relationships. And work from home, you just drift faster and faster and faster.
It's a really interesting point. We during COVID's a great example of this. We actually went that other direction and made sure that we had pre-booked in regular catch-ups, and you know, where teams were, you know, say 20 large, we'd break them into smaller groups to try and the thing we noticed, and you know, part of, I guess, the fun part of our culture is that banter and that family feel. So smaller groups meant that we could continue to have that banter. So it wasn't every meeting was a serious meeting. This is what's going on. This is, you know, what's changing. There was obviously the highlights of those kind of things, but it was more about just that employee engagement, making sure that they felt the same as they would if they were in the office, with obviously more of a virtual touch to it than that face-to-face.
COVID was you needed to look at literally when we went home, you had to up it. We already had a lot of that in place and we were already doing it. To be honest, I think you needed to increase it. Like we did the social things, we had social drinks, we did all of those types of things. Bless you, man. All of those things happened and needed to happen. You needed to double down on that. And don't get me wrong, it was tiring as well. But it was a difference between keeping a team and doing well versus a bunch of people that are now probably at the end of it who already moved or starting to move and things like that. So I think to me it was a critical piece.
It's funny, you know, like, I mean, back in the day, I mean, we all work remotely. Hosted network is entirely remote now. So most people haven't been able to do that, but we've done it for a long time, close to 15 years. We've had staff that are remote and whatnot. So we're a bit more, used to it. But one of the things that I used to complain about as the boss in the office is the water cooler. It used to drive me insane. I tell you what, COVID really taught me how important that was. Letting people have that little break, of that sort of mental break of bits and pieces, and how to actually do that virtually is hard. So then now we've got this kind of hybrid workforce. Some people are in person, some people aren't. It's a tough world. And in the last 2 years, I think that I'd hope that it has taught a lot of us lessons that would have taken us a lot longer to learn. Whereas with COVID, we were forced to start learning them virtually overnight. Yep. So, guys, I guess we're nearly at time. We're nearly an hour, but I just want to sort of cover off the last little bits and pieces. A couple of, I guess, very quick ones. In terms of systems, from a HR, managing a team or whatnot, are there any things that that you guys, or systems or companies that you might use that the guys on the line can actually look at to do some extra offline reading that you've found useful? I'll give you an example. We use the New South Wales Business Chamber, right? They're great. Whenever we have any issues with, we're not sure, they make sure we cross our T's, cross our I's, dot our I's, and they provide insurance as well for fair work issues and things like that to make sure that we go through that. And that's something that I've found really valuable to make sure that we are, and the HR guidance piece of that.
We're members of AI Group, which provides, I guess, that employment, kind of like the business chamber, but we've also got an external HR consultant that we lean on relatively heavily. So she's, at least once a week, we have a conversation with her about various different things and, planning, as well as, things that need to be actioned,
Does that HR consultant work just with you, or does it work with your employees as well?
Well, both, yeah. So we've had her in recently to work with a couple of employees that we're struggling in different areas, and so she'll work with them. So it's not just us that's I guess engaged with her. She's comes in and when we're trying to do group things, she might come in and run those, get feedback. Sometimes get feedback without managers and that sitting in there. So we can go through that continuous improvement to, allow us to grow.
Okay, James, from a process operational side of things, do you see many systems or tools that are out there?
There's a lot, and to be honest, I'm reluctant to say go get tools because it's a people thing. Like, tools should be once you understand how to manage the people, have the process, and then.
What about blogs then? Are there any good reading resources that you might know of?
There's lots of people on LinkedIn that there's content. And there's heaps of content around there. There's Next Gen HR, there's Alchemy 2.0, there's Axia HR, and they all work in the MSP space and have really good content. And they, backing up again what I said before and what Matt just said, the HR consultancy is really important. It's that ongoing relationship. It's being involved, understanding the business. It's basically managed services for people management is what we need to look at. There's services like EmploySure and HR Assured that are out there that are cheap and reasonable, but they're very generic. They're not based on getting to know your company. They'll just tick off a lot of items, which can be good for people. That can be a good first step to make sure we're HR compliant with fair work and all that sort of thing. But if you're really engaged with this and want to learn, you'll quickly outgrow those types of services and get more mature. And that's where these sort of HR consultants are a lot more important.
Okay. Anything from you, Ryan, to finish us off?
No, look, just on the back of what James said there, it's important to have someone helping you with those areas. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think you can abdicate it. You can delegate and whatnot, delegate and verify, but don't abdicate the responsibility. At the end of the day, these people and these people are your team. You should be getting close to them. You should be understanding if there's problems. If you're not a people person, look, it's not going to be the most easiest thing, but you're going to have to get through it, because it's the best way of going to be of managing and actually maintaining your staff and actually having a good culture is if you're right there with it. Delegating that out to a third-party company or whatnot, it'll work for a period of time, but you'll find that as people go on for longer and longer, they just won't be as connected to the business. And as to that final question, no, look, off the top of my head, look, the guys have mentioned some good resources, peer groups, community groups, all of those things, local chambers, all of those things, like other soft skills, like any of those things will definitely help and improve. There wouldn't be one particular place. And again, as James said, you don't need to add another system. You're dealing with humans here, you're dealing with carbon-based life forms, look after them. And what's his name? I think that's your easiest way of doing it. Don't just try and, just ignore it.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for today. It's been absolutely great going through this, and hopefully everyone on the call took a few tidbits away, a few light bulb moments. And hopefully you enjoyed your lunch, whatever that may have been, Uber Eats and all. So our next upcoming event we've got a couple of technical workshops coming up on the screen there. We also have some marketing workshops. Our next MSP in conversation, and James, I believe that you'll love this topic, MSP mindset, avoiding the noise and the stress. So we'll then have another one for finding qualified prospects. So check out our events page. You can register and find out all the details on there. If you joined late or if you want to recap anything that we spoke about today, this will be recorded and we will be sending it out in the next couple of days. But again, thank you for joining us, everyone, and the panelists. Thank you so much, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.